Okay, here we go. Um, Jane has been with us 1 year as of January, this past January. Lisa Shemensky, she's on vacation actually, visiting some family out of state, so she's not able to join us today, but she's been with us 3 years as of this past July. And then as of this past March, I've been with RSA for 11 years. So those are our anniversaries. Congratulations to us. Okay, the next thing, I invited Jamie to the meeting, our member services user experience coordinator. Jamie, would you like to unmute yourself? And I know it's been shared on the listserv, but I was thinking you could share your good news and anything else, since this is your last database meeting as an RSA staff member.
Yeah, thank you, Erica. It's both good and a little sad news. I am leaving RSA actually at the end of this week. I was offered the position of adult services manager at the Morton Library. Morton is where I kind of started my library career, and it's always been a bit of a dream to go back. I was not expecting it to be now, but it just happened to work out that way. So I'm excited to start, but also sad to leave RSA. I very much have enjoyed my time here, working with member services team and being able to work with all of you, with all of the library staff. So thank you for your questions and for everything. I'm excited to still be in an RSA member library, so I'll still be able to see and contact you guys once in a while. So thank you, Erica.
You're welcome, Jamie. Thank you for saying goodbye to us, but think of it this way, it's not really goodbye, it's the continuation of the next chapter for Jamie at Morton. So
Definitely.
yeah, we're just so glad that you were able to really be the guinea pig for that position, because that was a new position, the user experience coordinator, and I remember Jamie was the clear standout for it. So it's been wonderful having her with us, trying to really pioneer that position. Let's see. One thing I wanted to mention, and you likely saw this as well on the listserv. I think Kendall posted it last Friday, but the position ad for Jamie's position is posted on the Rails jobs board. I think the plan is to have the ad run mid October, so just a couple more weeks, and then we'll see the candidates that we got. Kendall is hoping maybe we can have a good candidate in place to start after the Thanksgiving holiday. So we'll see what happens, but certainly check out the Rails jobs board if you or you know someone that might be interested in our user experience coordinator position. Okay. The next thing on here, Kendall asked that I also encourage everyone. I know many of you in this meeting are already doing this, so I'm preaching to the choir. But he suggested just giving you another reminder of the importance of emailing the RSA help desk. We have an easy link on our website. Remember, it's rsahelp@railslibraries.info. But notice here when I'm on rsanfp.com, towards the middle of the page under general quick links, there's this email RSA help desk link. And notice that would just open a window here. I won't click it because it'll open my email, and I don't want to open that can of worms right now, but it would open an email to rsahelp@railslibraries.info. The reason that's so important, it ensures multiple sets of RSA staff eyes see your message. It usually results in a faster response. I know this is true, especially if something is emailed to me directly. I hate to say it, but it's true. Depending on the question, though, and I know several of you have already seen this happen, especially with cataloging, but it may still need to be routed to a particular staff member. But the good thing is, in cataloging, as soon as a message comes into the help desk, if it's not a cataloging request, if it's something else, um, we acknowledge it soon after it comes and let you know that we're passing it to the appropriate staff member on our team if we're unable to answer it. So even if you can't get an answer right away and it needs to be shared with another staff member here, at least you know your message was received and it didn't get lost in the shuffle. Another thing Kendall recently posted on the listserv that I'm thinking you likely saw, but again, a reminder never hurts. Kendall said to encourage you to send any emails involving reports to the RSA help desk. Really using this RSA report request form here on the RSA support staff homepage under online request forms. Really, this is the best way to ask us for a report because it automatically goes into the help desk. Certain staff on our team know to look for it. So if you can, please try to send any report requests either via this form or an email to the help desk. We really are trying to get our membership. We're really trying to get you ready for the new help desk that's coming. This new help desk, you won't really notice a change on your end. Actually, if all goes according to plan, you won't notice any change. It should be that seamless. You would still email RSA help at railslibraries.info. But the change would be on the back end where we work through incoming emails you've sent us. We really have recognized, especially as staff has changed on the RSA team, especially as we're working remotely as well, and it's more difficult to connect with each other for some tasks, that we really need an internal knowledge base for us RSA staff where we can keep an archive of emails, phone calls, in-person interactions with you, everything in one place so that all of us are in the loop. We can have an accurate read on our workload, figure out where we can shift priorities around. So think of this nudge in the direction of the help desk really is getting us ready for this new help desk that ultimately will help us better serve you. So that's what's important to keep in mind about emailing the help desk at this point. We'll certainly keep you posted as the new help desk is ready, but like I said, you shouldn't notice a change if all goes according to plan. Okay, and then the last thing here under Kendall's update, I did want to share some progress that we've made on the RSA strategic plan since the last database committee meeting in January. What I thought would be helpful for this group is just sharing some cataloging relevant details for this plan out on the RSA board committees groups page under the users group. I think it's the second document. Kendall always includes for each users group meeting packet, he always includes a strategic plan update to keep our membership informed. So I thought I'd just talk through a few of these and how cataloging has tied into these just to keep you posted on the progress we're making. Think of this really as the roadmap, steering our course based on the feedback that you provided during that strategic planning process. I think it was over a year ago, just over a year ago now. So this first goal about informing and engaging our members, we're trying to do meetings online like we're doing here now. I'm hoping after this meeting we can get back on track with our January, May, September meeting schedule. In May, we conducted a survey, like it mentions here, about committee feedback, getting your thoughts on committees. We'll talk about some of those results here in a little bit. The second goal about member engagement, communicating clearly, comprehensively, increasing relationships. one thing that I know is going to play into this goal, and we'll talk in more depth about it here later on, but I am planning on scheduling one of these online sharing roundtable sessions for catalogers. I know at this point we haven't had one for catalogers, but we're going to be making some changes to the cataloging request operations, both on your end and on our end. So we'll host one of these cataloging request roundtables here. I'm hoping within the next month or so, to talk about the changes that are coming, and get your feedback, questions, concerns on those changes. So stay tuned. We will have one of these roundtables, but I wanted to be sure and mention that. We did do 2 cataloging office hours. We did one in June and one in August. We're hoping to do another one next month. These are sessions, you've maybe seen these on the listserv, where you can drop in, ask your question, just chat with us RSA staff, chat with other libraries on the call. And then when you feel like your question's been answered, don't have anything else to chat about, you can just leave the meeting. So it's very informal. You don't have to attend the whole hour. Mostly, we just want to make sure for cataloging, member services, reports, system administration type topics, we just want to make sure we're giving you an open forum, so to speak, of time where you can log in, ask your questions, chat, and then log off. Okay, let me jump down here. This next one, provide paths to leadership opportunities. We will be electing. It's hard to believe it's it's been a year, but it has been. Remember, each January we elect or take a volunteer or 2 for co-chairs, but we elect volunteer database committee chairs or co-chairs. So there will be an opportunity here coming up when we meet in January to consider a position either as chair or co-chair of the database committee. So that's a good leadership opportunity. And then the last thing I wanted to mention that's relevant in this strategic plan update, let me go down a little bit further. Okay, right here. So this is under the operating efficiency, create training opportunities to equip members to best serve their patrons. I'm thinking you've seen this on the listserv as well, but the cataloging team, we've taken the, let's see, was it 5 or 6 hours? 4 to 6 hour in-person basic workflows cataloging workshop that was offered at Rails East Peoria Service Center in person. We've taken that and transitioned it online. That the cataloging team did a great job working with Kendall as well to bring this online. We'll talk more about how that workshop works later on in the meeting, but I'm thinking you've likely seen listserv posts with workshop invitations. We've known for some time we needed to take that training online, and the pandemic was really the impetus for us to do this. So we're proud of that. We realize there's still work that needs to be done, but we'll get there. Like anything, it's a process, and we're learning and making tweaks with each one of these that we teach. So that's good news about that training. I did want to extend a special thank you to Lisa Shemensky. Taught the first of these workshops actually it was earlier this month. I'm already thinking it's October. She did a wonderful job teaching it, and thank you especially for those members that were more than eager to join us, even though they knew it was the first one and it could potentially be bumpy, especially with technology, but it went smoothly. But I wanted to be sure and say thank you, because I know sometimes it's daunting to go first, so to speak, with a new offering. And then the last thing I'll mention about the training opportunities, I think it was over the summer, August, if I remember correctly. I know that we announced several new recorded videos that we had made and posted on the RSA YouTube channel. So let me take a quick detour there. If I go to the home page, notice on the home page, there's the RSA YouTube channel. I think the best way to look at this is playlists. Notice you can see several groupings of videos. So there's several new videos for cataloging requests. There's one on the RSA website. So we've put them into various playlists here. Let me take a look here at our agenda. I'm thinking that was it for the strategic plan. We'll try to do this at each meeting, just telling you some of the cataloging specific updates for the strategic plan. I really feel it's important to keep you informed because really this is your strategic plan based off of what you had shared with us during the strategic planning process. So I want to make sure that we're doing our part from our end to make sure you're informed of the goals that you helped us set. Okay, any questions before we move to the next agenda item? Have I missed anything, Jane, in the chat? I admit I've been looking here at my notes. Yeah, okay, I'll go ahead and push forward. We'll see if Jane chimes in with anything. Let's see.
No, there hasn't been anything. Sorry, Erica. It took me a long time.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay.
No problem.
Okay. That's it. There hasn't been anything. Thanks.
Okay, good. Sure. Let's see. I'll close this. So the next agenda item, I wanted to follow up too, because remember we had started, it might have even been a year ago. I remember we talked about it at the last database meeting in January, but we may have even started talking about it before then. We had started talking about in the context of the strategic plan, how maybe we need to rethink this committee. It's been a while since we've had a discussion about this committee. I know it's a very old committee. I remember when it was combined into one meeting with circulation. I remember when we split that into database and circ, but we haven't really revisited it until the past year or so ago in the context of the strategic plan. Remember I mentioned earlier, we had done a survey earlier this year. Anna had put it together and sent it on our listserv to get members' feedback about the committees. I'm thinking some of you in this group may have responded. And if you did, thank you. We were a little bit nervous sending it out with the pandemic and library closures and staff having different schedules and workloads. So if you did reply, thank you, because we really are just trying to take the temperature of this group. I thought I would share some of the results from this survey that have to do with the database committee. And then we can talk about some next steps. I mentioned, remember, that we'll be electing / volunteering a chair, co-chair at our next meeting in January. So please be thinking if that's something you, might be interested in. So let's go ahead and take a look at those survey results. So I'm back here at rsanfp.com. From the left-hand side, we have, where did it go? Yes, even I have trouble finding things on the RSA support site. It is not you, and we recognize this is something that needs to be reworked. Anyways, here's surveys and policy feedback. And then notice here under closed survey results, there's this committee feedback survey. So this was closed in late March. Notice here on the first page, we had 58 respondents. And then I'm going to jump down because the section about the database committee in particular, it doesn't start until page 35. So let me jump down. This was a big survey because we asked about the users group, the circulation committee, database committee, reports committee, and the RSA day committee. So we we did one big survey on all those groups, so that's why the results are so long. But notice here, most of who responded had not attended had not attended a database meeting in the past 24 months, 2 years. I did a double take there because we initially were thinking of a different question, I remember, for this one. So that's why I did a double take. But this actually is good because remember, we were trying to get some feedback from members who maybe don't typically attend these events as well as those who do. But we really were hoping to reach some that haven't attended. Yeah, it looks like most people understand the purpose of this committee, so that's encouraging. If I go down a few more pages here. It looks like, I feel like this one is most helpful to look at the text rather than the bar graph. But it looks like the informational update from RSA staff, discussions of cataloging practices and concerns, training, demonstrations. It looks like those are our 3 top hitters. So that's what we've been doing. We'll certainly steer the course. But that's helpful feedback because again, we weren't really sure as we started thinking about the purpose of this committee if we were even really talking about what you thought was helpful. Let's see here. The most helpful agenda items, not surprisingly, the RSA staff sharing and then the library staff sharing. And that makes sense based off of the most valuable information that we looked at in the previous question. So that certainly makes sense. I know with the library staff sharing, we could certainly, I have some ideas, and we could certainly boost the library staff sharing and move information like this even into a recorded RSA informational type session and allow more time for library staff sharing. So that's something that we certainly don't need to decide now, but I just wanted to mention that we can certainly make changes to have more time for library staff sharing during these meetings. It looks like it doesn't really matter to those who responded if the database and the CERC meetings are on the same day. We did discuss internally, as long as we have these meetings only online, we really don't want to put them on the same day. You may have attended or had colleagues at your library who attended Anna's CERC meeting last Thursday, the 24th. We really don't want to make anybody, if you're interested and need to attend both meetings, we don't want to have anybody sit through 5 or 6 hours of a Zoom meeting in one day if you go to both committee meetings. So we're thinking if these are online only, like this one, we'll put them on separate days. That way you don't feel like you've lost a whole day. It looks like there's agreement that we should try to meet before the RSA board and users group, which makes sense because if we have any policies or anything that they need to review, it makes sense for us to meet soon before them rather than soon after them. For the most part, we have been doing this because the board meets in February, board and users group, and we meet in January. The board meets in May. We typically, this one we may need to adjust, but it depends on the timing, but we may want to consider maybe meeting in March or April. I know those 2 months can be somewhat tricky because several of us RSA staff attend the Cersei Dynex annual Kosugi conference, but we can still, I feel like, revisit this idea of maybe shifting the meeting to March or April for the spring, so we get it done before the May board users group. And then the next users group is August. We've never done these meetings over the summer, but again, we can certainly change that if there's interest. But after August, the next board users group meeting would be November, and we're meeting today. We've avoided October in the past because of the Illinois Library Association ILA conference, usually being in October, and several RSA staff attend that, as well as possibly you too as a member. So that's kind of the rationale that we've gone with right now. But for the most part, we've stuck with having our meetings before the board users group, except in the case of May. That's kind of gotten a little bit tricky here. Let's see. I won't worry about the lunch question. I feel like that's certainly not anything to worry about right now, since it's not safe to do an in-person meeting. Yeah, let me go down. There's just a couple more things I wanted to share with you from this survey. It looks like most of the respondents have visited the database committee webpage. So that's encouraging. We weren't thinking of getting rid of the page. That wasn't the plan by any means, but we just wanted to see if our members knew about it. It looks like there's some use of the meeting notes and the recordings. So we'll certainly continue those. Yeah, and then I think this one is a little bit more helpful to look at the text rather than the bar graph. It looks like the primary reason for not attending these meetings, at least from the respondents, other staff from the library already attend. That's understandable. Everybody can't lose part of their workday to attend. It looks like it doesn't apply to their work, unavailable on the day or time of the meeting. I do think we can go ahead, as Kendall's done for the users group and the board, that we can start to vary the meeting days and times like we did with this meeting, rather than only meeting on a Thursday afternoon, or excuse me, a Thursday morning. So we'll do some variation in the times to see if that gets some additional members attending. I realize Thursday morning may work well for others, so it may kind of even out. But I do think we can start to vary meeting days and times just to see if that helps some different members attend. Yeah, I'm thinking that's actually, yeah, that was all I wanted to share with you from that survey. Any questions about the survey results just before I share a few other things here about next steps? Is there any feedback anybody'd like to share just about the committee in general? I know we've asked a couple times, it seems like an eternity ago, but we did ask, I know in January and maybe even before then, but if there's anything you'd like to share, either unmute or type it in the text chat. Okay, while you're thinking about it, for the next steps, like I mentioned in the context of the survey results discussion, we'll continue to focus on RSA and library staff sharing of best practices, policies, procedures, concerns, demos, that kind of thing. Since remember, there was at least from the respondents, quite a bit of interest in those types of topics. As I mentioned too, we'll leave the meeting schedule, the next one being in January. I haven't picked the exact date yet because I'm waiting on a couple other things to be a little bit firmer on my schedule, but we'll plan on the next meeting sometime in January after the holidays. And of course, there'll be a listserv post with an invitation. Like I mentioned, we may want to rethink the May meeting, since that's when the board and the users group meet. And then remember, September was our other meeting, which is before the November board users group. So I think for now, we can steer the course, possibly changing May, but that was my thought at this point. Yeah, let me see here. What else? A lot of these things I've already told you in the context of the results discussion, so that's good. Yeah, does that sound like an okay plan to everyone? I think we need to revisit this once it's safe and members are comfortable doing these meetings in person. Once that's an option, again, I think we should revisit this, because we are interested if and maybe you just want to do these online, or maybe you want to have it both online and in person. But I feel like that would be the time to revisit this, because right now, I don't know about you, but an in-person meeting with how many people are in here? 20 some people. That doesn't sound good right now at all to me. So, close to 30. So I just thought there's no need to talk about in person versus online for the future of this committee, since the in person just isn't doable right now. And it will be doable again at some point, but I'm just not sure when.
You did have one comment.
Sure.
Megan said that she would like to go back to in person, but for now, online is okay, but there is interest in returning to it. So.
Okay, good. Yeah, I would like to do something in person again, but I just want to make sure that's that's what the membership would like too. But that's thank you, Megan. That's reassuring that you two would like to do something in person. And that actually, again, when it's safe for us to do so, and you're comfortable coming in person, it might be nice actually to do that, because we haven't been in the same room with each other for who knows how long. Yeah, Aaron would too. Okay, that's helpful. Yeah, if anybody else has some thoughts as well on the in-person versus the online, go ahead and type those in, or unmute yourself. Yeah, we can certainly revisit it though, like I said, when we're in a better position to do things in person. Yeah, anything else about the committees before we? Yeah, okay, good. There's several, Carrie
I
and
was gonna say,
Lori.
yeah, you got a couple more comments or votes of support for in person.
Good. That's reassuring. I just feel like it's a little bit more, well, really, that's subjective. I was going to say sometimes it seems more engaging and more personal in person, but I know that really depends on your perspective. But that's reassuring. I appreciate those of you that chimed in to say you'd like to look at maybe revisiting the in person when it's a good time to do that. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to stop talking now. Good. Same for Pekin. Now I will really stop talking. Let's see. Jennifer, do you want to help facilitate the discussion number 4 here?
Course. So we thought we'd talk a little bit about how COVID has impacted technical services, like anything that you guys are doing differently, any suggestions that you might have, just a kind of general discussion. I know for us, one of the things that we did initially was a really simple thing where we got a second paper cutter. We use our paper cutter a lot, and that way we didn't have so many people sharing the same item. That was really before there was very much study of like fomite transmission via services, but we've kept it and it's been convenient. What other kind of adjustments have you guys made? Anything?
Did you have anything, Aaron, at Illinois Prairie? Not to pick on you, but I remember, Aaron, you said that you're doing things on the fly, which sometimes I feel like that's how we operate as well. If Aaron or anyone else. Yeah, that makes sense. Heidi says, Heidi's from Alpha Park. We let our boxes sit for 5 days before opening with new materials from the vendor, and clean our office every night. Yeah, I feel like cleaning is certainly a key piece to the puzzle, isn't it?
Yeah, we've done a lot more cleaning too. And then we have also, let our boxes sit initially. Now it seems like like, I know that a lot of our boxes seem to take a long time to get here, so we figure they're probably safe when they get here. They usually then sit, you know, another night overnight. Let me think what else. Oh, and we've been announcing, like, we have a couple printers, and we've been announcing when we're printing, and basically everybody cleans things after they use them, and the next person cleans them before they use them too. So
Sure.
things might get double cleaned. We figured that was better than not at all, or not knowing for sure.
The belt and suspenders approaches to cleaning is before and after. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah.
can only imagine. Let's see. Oh, that's good for Erin. She at Illinois Prairie, she hasn't had to change anything for cataloging. Her volunteers are coming in to help her help process the books. Ooh, I can't imagine Carrie trying to train somebody on processing with the social distancing. Yeah, I know that's been tricky during some of these member visits. And I remember, Jennifer, you said at Peoria, that's been tricky too with training with your team trying to do social distancing.
It's hard because we are trying to, yeah, stay the 6 feet apart. And a lot of what we do is on a computer screen. And I know I don't have very great vision. So if somebody's trying to show me something, it's really, we haven't really found a great way around this.
Yeah. No, it's difficult. It's helped with the trainings that I've done to have the projector and laptops, or I say training laptops for everyone. That's helped. But there's still the case where, yeah, kind of what you were saying, seeing something in particular on someone's screen where you really do need to be over their shoulder. Yeah, I feel like all we can do is really, at least on our end, wear a mask and try to limit the amount of time that we're over somebody's shoulder. Yeah. That was one thing actually that Heidi mentioned. I was going to ask about, she says the volunteers aren't back yet. Okay. That would make sense because you're not sure necessarily what their status is. So that makes sense too. Not accepting donations for the book sale. Yeah, that was one thing I was going to ask is how are your libraries handling items that are donated either for a book sale or for your collection even? Are you not accepting them or do you let them sit, for several days? Then you think about cataloging them. Does anybody else want to chime in about donated items?
Carrie just said that they're not taking donations. And we didn't for a long time. I think recently we might have taken some donations, but then they've
Okay.
been quarantining for at least the 7 days. And we haven't really been encouraging donations.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, there's always the problem of dumping, isn't there? Okay, Pekin looks like they quarantine for 7 days, the donations. That I could see that too. Galva not taking them. Yeah, I was just interested. Certainly there's there's no ultimatum, so to speak, from RSA about donations. I was just curious because I know attending some of the networking meetings for the suburban libraries over the summer, I know that they were not struggling, but they were thinking what to do themselves about donations because, and it makes sense. They were saying lots of patrons stuck at home. They're cleaning out closets and basements and attics and trying to put things they no longer want in a place such as the library where they might be wanted or needed. Okay, good. Yeah, Heidi says when they were working at home, they were looking at the RSA website resources and the YouTube. Okay, great. I'm glad that was something that really worked out for you to do.
It does look like Heidi also said that they are, with an increase in checkouts, running out of space for quarantine. So I don't know if anybody else has had that problem or not.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jane. Just trying to catch up here with what I might have missed. Yeah, and that's interesting to know what you're doing with the incoming items in the mail or in delivery. I was thinking like from Baker and Taylor or Midwest Tape. Yeah, but that actually was another question. What did your libraries decide about the quarantine process? Again, certainly not trying to pass judgment. Mostly, I'm just curious. Um, in particular, because again, this was another question from that Northern networking group over the summer. Do you quarantine items after they are cataloged, but before you put them on the shelf, or let them fill a hold, like if someone been waiting for it, or do you just put them on the shelf because just staff, have been handling them? I'm just curious, again, not trying to pass judgment
We
on what
haven't
you're
been
doing.
quarantining things that have only been touched by staff because we assume everybody, and I see it right out my window here, that everybody's following all the rules. Staff are
Mhm.
wearing masks, they're washing their hands, we're cleaning the carts, we're very careful in-house. And that's one of the other things that I think has helped here so much is that everybody's on the same page. Like
Sure.
we discussed internally, I did with Randall, the director of the safety procedures for TS. And then I put them all in writing and shared it with everybody when we came back to work. And everybody has been outstanding at following all those procedures. So
Good.
if only staff have handled it, if it's been out on the shelf where a patron could potentially touch it, then we quarantine it no matter what. But if it's only been in our internal areas where no patrons are,
Mhm.
then we're not quarantining things again.
Sure. Yeah, that's our opinion too. With the items you send us in the delivery for cataloging requests. We quarantine them upon arrival. I know I've sent a couple listserv posts about that, just because doesn't matter which libraries, but we've had some reports of at least a few libraries that haven't been quarantining items touched by patrons, and have even had hospitals, or excuse me, staff members hospitalized with COVID. But anyways, on our end though, it just makes sense to quarantine upon arrival, since we're not really sure the status of who touched them as they came to us. But we too, like you, Jennifer, at Peoria, after just the RSA staff handles the items, since we're not patrons, and we're following precautions, we haven't been quarantining them either before we send them back to you in the delivery. Yeah, it looks like Aaron at Illinois Prairie puts them on the shelf right away because just staff and volunteers have touched them. Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that too. Again, not trying to stereotype, but I'm just thinking in my trips here around Washington where I live, that it is certainly the older people, and that's good, because I've heard, and I'm sure you have too, they can be more vulnerable to COVID. I'm not trying to generalize, but yeah, they certainly, from what I've seen here just around where I live, they've certainly been more diligent with masks and keeping distance. So that makes sense about Aaron's volunteers being elderly and already being careful. Looks like Melody doesn't quarantine them, since just a couple staff handle them. Same at Alpha Park. Yeah. Yeah, good. It looks like there's a lot of consistency here, where, like at Washington as well, where you just put the items out after they're cataloged, since just staff have touched them, and you're following good PPE procedures like clean hands, face masks. Yeah, I wondered about that, Michelle, using plastic tubs. I remember in some of those networking meetings over the summer, libraries, I know we don't have container stores around here, but some of the libraries in those meetings were talking about going to the container store to buy plastic boxes and bins for quarantine purposes, like what Michelle's saying here at her library in Elmwood. Yeah, that makes sense to keep them quarantined and in their own little space. Yeah, I really could see space being a problem. Yeah, lots of checkouts, and then where do you put all those items to quarantine them? Yeah. In a sense, I guess that's a good thing too, because your checkouts are really booming. But on the other hand, it's a pain because yeah, where do you put all those items? Yeah. Was there anything else that anyone wanted to share about how they've been coping with the pandemic for technical services? This has been really interesting. I'm going to see if I can save the chat log after the meeting. Maybe we could make that available. We could take the names out, maybe. I was thinking we could share that perhaps with the meeting notes and the recording if we were able to take the names out. Oh, bed bugs, yeah. Heidi at Alpha Park says they had pest control here and that bed bugs can't climb plastic. Oh, place your suitcase in the bathtub after you get home, and then the little critters can't climb out and possibly infest your bed and you wake up with a rash. I won't go any further, but that's interesting to know that they do not like plastic. Yeah. Yeah, good to know. Okay. Well, if you think of anything else about this, certainly put it in the text chat and we can read it as the meeting goes on. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Jennifer, for sharing what Peoria is doing and getting the conversation going on that. Why don't we? I have 2:04. Why don't we take a break? The meeting's scheduled to go until 3:30, and we do have some more here on the agenda. Some topics will be quicker than others, but I'm thinking now might be a good time for a break. So if I can do this properly, I was going to set a timer for the next 10 minutes, so you will see it on your screen. And I was thinking we could get up, stretch, use the restroom, maybe fix something to drink. I would give you a piece of chocolate, but unfortunately, no virtual chocolate. So let me see if I can get that timer going. And then we can regroup. Yeah, why don't we regroup at 2:15? So I will go ahead and set this. And then I will mute myself and I'll see you again in about 10 minutes.
Don't forget to stop the recording.
Yes, thank you, Jane. This is why I need a reminder. Pause.
And the hold rule helper checklist are available. I always suggest using the electronic version. So you can see the circ rule helper checklist. And right down here is the hold rule helper checklist. Anytime you guys request a new item type, we need you guys to fill these two checklists out for us so that when we set them up for you, that all of that is in place. Otherwise, they get the random RSA. I can't even remember what the random circ rules are for the hold rules. It's an odd number, and people are like, I don't understand why this item type is working this way. Well, it's because you never set up your circ rules.
I think it's
So
16 days, if I
yeah,
remember
it's like
right.
an odd weird number because
Yeah, it's not weeks.
Yeah. So just keep that in mind, that if you need a new item type, or if you want a new item cat, or you need a new home location, lists for all of those are here on the RSA website, found under the system parameters. They're handy dandy. And if you check those first before you email us, I'd be very, very, very thankful. I mean, I can search them too, but you would better know what you need than I would know what you need. So with that in mind, we ask that if you need a new item type, if you need a new home location, if you want a new item cat 4 or 5, if you're just trying to decide how you want to set up a new item type that you guys got and you need recommendations or suggestions, I will happily try to help you. I think I did this with Heidi when they were considering doing on orders. We went back and forth on different item or ideas, and I'm not sure what they decided on, but we went through it. We talked a lot about it. And I don't mind. That's part of what my job is. And when I worked at Pekin, that was one of the things I had to think of on my own, was how do I consider these things? What type of item type do I need? And what our circ and hold rules were going to be for things. So if you're going to ask for those things, we just ask you to send an email to the help desk, which, you have your link right here on the RSA website. If you don't know what it is, rsahelp@railslibraries.info. It's in every email we send to you. And if you do cataloging requests, you get a lot of emails from us with that link on there. When it comes to item types, the things we ask that you include a copy of the circ and hold rules. We ask that you tell us what item type you'd like, what home location if you would like to add one. If you aren't sure on something, you can just email us, and I have a form letter that I send back. So I don't forget to ask you for every bit of information I need. The process is pretty simple. You send me the information. If you don't send me everything I need, I email you back with a checklist that explains the entire process from filling out the circ and hold rules checklists to me adding it to your drop down and asking you not to use it until after you hear back from James, because James sets up all the circ and hold rules for your libraries. And if you use a new item type before your circ and hold rules are set in place, then we get our mess ups where things aren't circulating correctly, or someone can place a hold on the item that you didn't want setting a hold or placing a hold on it, because we need an overnight for circ rules and hold rules to be totally in place. Also, if you don't wait to hear from someone, your overdue notices may not be correct, because after James plays with your item types, he sends it on over to Anna so that she can make sure they're added to overdue notices and lost notices. So there's a whole string of us that are involved in this process, and so we just ask that you guys keep those things in mind when you're adding a new item type to your library. There's a lot that goes into it, and it can't just be done in a snap. We wish it could, but it doesn't work that way. It takes at least an overnight. In some cases, it takes several days due to staffing and the like, because even if I give something to James today, he may not be able to get to it today. He may not be able to get to it until tomorrow or next week due to, various things. So, but we try to answer those questions right away and at least tell you, hey, this is in the process, and we'll let you know when it's done. Did I forget anything you wanted me to mention, Erica?
You showed the circ and the hold rule helper checklist, right?
I didn't show them. I showed where they were.
Okay, that should be good. A couple questions. I just wanted to ask this group. I'm thinking that was everything, Rhonda.
I
Yeah.
think so too, because if you have a question and I didn't answer it right now, you can send an email to the help desk and I will gladly help you. I really will.
Sometimes
I'm
there's
pretty
those special circumstances
I'm
where
I'm pretty quick on the home location and cataloging parameter questions. I try to answer those as soon as possible.
Yeah, Rhonda really helps. Thank you. Because as some of you've noticed, I know Michelle at the Morrison and Mary Wiley Library. Trying to think who else. Lori at Washington, you saw this, I think, just earlier in the month. If a new code needs to be created, whether it's a home location or an item category or an item type, I know sometimes the member is waiting on me to follow up. So I do appreciate you always being patient with me. I know, especially Michelle at the Morrison and Mary Wiley, you're the queen of patience, because I know sometimes I try to get back to those new codes within the same week it's submitted, but depending on what's going on and how much convincing of Kendall I need to do about a new code, if the situation warrants it, sometimes it takes me longer to get back to you than I would like. So I really appreciate you being patient, especially with me.
And I try very hard to find you a code that will fit before I have to send it to Erica, but sometimes there's just nothing out there.
Good enough code, as we affectionately call it. Many things are good enough. The couple things. So I wanted to ask before we move to agenda item 6 with Anna. The first thing, this is more just a comment. We do plan to create. Remember, we mentioned the new help desk earlier. We're hoping to have that up and running by the end of this year for RSA staff, the back end. But as part of that new help desk, we have the ability to make web forms like the report request form, the cataloging request form. It'll be easy for us to make additional forms like that. And I know one of the forms on my list to have created is when you do want to start using a new cataloging parameter, whether it's an item type, a home location, an item category, what you need to fill out on the form and submit it. All of those details Rhonda just talked about. That way, you can basically just go to the form, enter the information, and then it goes to us automatically in the help desk. So you won't have to try to remember all those details Rhonda just mentioned. But in the meantime, I did want to ask if you feel like just starting with an email with those details Rhonda mentioned, or if you feel like a cheat sheet of some kind would be helpful, of things to keep in mind when you, how about a thumbs up if you think a cheat sheet would be helpful, or type in the text chat, a yes, if you don't have a camera. Yeah, it looks like Carrie. Okay, there's, some interest. Okay, we'll think about doing a cheat sheet of things to keep in mind when you need to submit a request to add a new parameter. Yeah, that's good to know. And go ahead and type in the text chat too, like I said, if you think that'll be helpful. I'm just not sure how soon that form is going to be set up. And then, like Rhonda said, sometimes if not all the information's provided, sometimes you go back and forth with her. So I'm thinking maybe a cheat sheet in the meantime would be helpful, so that Rhonda and you don't have to go back and forth. Hopefully she'll get everything she needs. So, okay, that's something that we'll look into, and we'll keep you posted once that is ready. Thank you. Yeah, okay, I think then we're ready to go to Anna's agenda item. And I think, yep, you're a co-host, Anna. So I'm hoping you can share your screen. And
all right, let me pull up my cheat sheet and then I'll share my screen. Okay, you should be seeing my screen now. I'm going to put this link in the chat as well. just to make life easy, hopefully. Just a sec. Okay. Erica asked me to do a little brief kind of explanation of the RSA Cat new book, new item, whatever, new material carousel. I would say, you know, and just kind of how it works, your different options for how this list can be populated. Some libraries only have one new thing carousel. Others have I'd say up to 3 currently. We may explore other options at some point in time, but as of right now, your options are kind of new books, which will often show up as new book-like items, new movies, or new music. And those are kind of the 3 main ones that we see in libraries. We see kind of some libraries use all 3, some just do 2, some just do 1, whatever you want in that regard. But there are a couple of different ways that these lists can be populated, and I'll show you a couple of examples to see you know, the different options. But basically, the way we set these up is we create a report for your library that runs on Sunday mornings. So that's when these lists get refreshed. And originally, the kind of the default was that these lists have been populated sort of based on the date the item, did I have that right? The date the item was created being the default, or was it the other way around? Either way.
The other way around. So the date,
the
date that
bibliographic
bib
record
yeah.
was created. Okay. Yeah, so kind of that was the default, was so if your library added an item to a bibliographic record that was created in whatever date range you give us when we're setting up the report, typically I'd say something like within the last 60 days is probably kind of the default. And it matches the item category 3 for, you know, books or movies or music, any of those item types. Then it goes on this list basically and shows up on your RSA Cat page. The other way to populate these lists is to populate them based on the item created date. So this would be any copy of anything that you add to your collection basically will have a new item created date. So this may be, this is what I think of it as the new to you sort of way to do it, is these books may not be new publications, they may be replacement copies you've purchased or things like that, but they would show up on your new books list. So those are kind of the 2 main ways to do it. I will just kind of mention that sometimes we have had libraries call with concerns of like, there's almost nothing on my list. Why? Especially during the closure, and it would be, oh well, your date range for however it's set up was only to include things that were added within the last 60 days, and that library had been functionally closed for 60 days or something like that. So we did have times where, you know, just kind of finagling the date range a little bit has solved the problem, or you know, changing how that list is populated has yielded better results, basically. I think that's kind of all I need to say about that at the moment, but just kind of think about that when you are cataloging stuff. And, you know, I don't know, this is probably a conversation that you would be having in conjunction with, you know, other staff in your library, since the other staff are going to be probably the ones who are using the RSA Cat, you know, sort of patron facing technology more and seeing these results. But it is just kind of worth knowing that there are those 2 options, and depending on how things are entered. So if you know, your circ manager is coming to you and saying, hey, these things are showing up in my thing, you can kind of enlighten them a bit as to why perhaps, you know, that sort of thing. I'm just going to show you briefly a couple of different libraries, RSA Cat pages. My meeting controls are over my tabs, which is a delight. But I don't want it to be that small either. And big in my window here. Okay, so this is the normal public libraries page, and RSA Cat page, and you can see they've got their drop-down menus. Actually, let me refresh. So the book I want to use as an example is, oh no, where'd it go? I'm gonna have to use a different one.
That's okay.
Our Pigs in a Pickle did not reappear.
Oh, I like that title.
I know, I'm kind of bummed. Oh, how about Kiss My Cupcake? That's pretty good. Okay, so they've got their list of new book-like items. You've also got your new movies on DVD, new music items. But this is one of the options. And so if we go over to workflows, you can see I was all set for pigs in a pickle. If we go over to the control tab, we can see that the title, the created date, was July 31st. And that is within the last 60 or something days, which is probably within the range of their report. So that's that. But another library, Towanda, has their list populated based on the item created date. So if we look up Midnight Sun, under call number and item, we'll see that they created, created,
Yeah, scroll down to the Towanda item. It looks
Oh
like
yeah, that's
on the
we were talking about well, where is Towanda? Did I not?
Oh, it's just Midnight
I chose
Sun.
Toulon. No,
Yeah.
I hit Toulon instead.
There
That's
are
the
several
problem.
key libraries. That's right. Yeah, there you go.
All right, cool. There we go. I was like, what am I doing wrong? Speaking of being with it or not today. All right, yeah. So created August 27th. So even though, as you can see, though, from the one that I pulled up before, maybe there are ones that were created earlier. So, but whereas, when was this actually? Yeah, Control has it. This record was created later. That other one, I guess, could have been an on order record or something originally. But so those are just kind of the two main ways. Of course, if you're not sure, this would be a completely reasonable thing for you not to be sure how your libraries was set up. So if this is something that you are considering changing, you're not happy with the items that are coming up in your list, like you're seeing a lot of stuff that's not new, but you just gotten a donation and added it to your collection, and now your new book list is swamped with things that are actually 13 years old because you got a donation of Goosebumps novels, then that may be something you want to look at changing. So if you're not sure how yours is set up, or you're wondering why weird things are showing up in your list, send a ticket to the RSA help desk or give us a call on the toll-free line, and we can look at how your library's reports are set up, and maybe kind of shed some light at least on why it's not doing what you want it to be doing, basically, and then potentially make changes for you as well. So anything else you wanted me to add to that, or did I hit the highlights?
No, that was wonderful. I just feel like seeing some examples helps, because I know in the past there's been questions too, if it's based off of the item type or the home location, because notice for this Towanda item, it's a book new item type. And I remember when Towanda had first reached out, I don't know, seems like forever ago, June, we'll say, even though it wasn't that long ago. I remember they had some items that were older assigned the book new item type.
Right.
And they weren't showing up in the carousel, and they thought that triggered the carousel. So what you shared, Anna, is helpful, and also put in the cheat sheet, because sometimes we just think, oh, if it's marked new here, then that means it
Right.
triggers the new elsewhere.
Right. And while the item type and category play a role in the report, their role is more in sorting it onto the correct list. So when we're setting up these reports, we're using item cat 3. And so all the item types that are associated with item cat 3 book, which includes book new and also just book and all of that, that just tells it needs to go on the book list as opposed to the music list. So that's kind of the role that the item type plays in it, but it doesn't have a role in kind of determining the newness of the item, the date created, or the date the bibliographic record was created are the things that determine newness.
Yeah. One thing I just thought of, we can certainly too, if you use Blue Cloud Analytics, the reporting tool, you could run a report there. I'm not sure if we have one set up. You could try, but I was just thinking, let's say your library was considering making a change to its settings for the carousel, and you'd like to see a list of the books that would be considered new, if you changed it to maybe not the last 60 days, but the last 90 days.
Right.
We could run a report based off of how your carousel's set up, whether the bib created or the item created date. We could run a report for you to list the titles. That way you could see before you make the change what kind of materials would show up. I was just thinking that might be helpful, or it may not be. I know sometimes my ideas make things more difficult than they need to be, but
Yeah.
anyways, yeah.
Yeah, and then just so you know, where to find this cheat sheet, it is under, I put the direct link there, but it's under RSA Cat information, and then there's promotional/help documents. And so we stashed it down there under this RSA Cat new book carousel. So in case you need to refer back to that and lose the link, that there it is. So I will stop my screen share.
Thank you, Anna. Yeah, that was really helpful.
You are welcome.
Okay, let's see if I can get my screen back here. Okay, I'm hoping everyone can see the agenda. Let's see here. Okay, so I did want to spend, we're doing well on time. I wanted to spend a chunk of our meeting talking about cataloging requests. I've got several details here. The first thing, a reminder of our quarantine and our precautions. Some of these details we touched on earlier as we talked about the impact of COVID-19 on technical services operations. Let me just show you though. I did send a listserv post in late August. I'm going to go back to rsanfp.com. And then over here on the left, this actually is a new page we created since the January database meeting. There's now a separate page with cataloging requests documentation. If I click on that, notice that there's several documents here just about cataloging requests, one of them being the memo that I had shared in late August on the listserv. I'll go ahead and open this and we'll take a quick look at it to review, but I'm thinking you likely saw this about a month ago. So we are following the current Rails and then OCLC Realm project that's essentially giving items COVID-19 and seeing how long the virus survives on them. So we're following the recommendations of that project and also Rails to quarantine for 7 days rather than 3. And as I mentioned earlier, we're doing that just to be extra careful since we're not sure of the situation at the particular libraries where they're coming from. Let's see here. Yes, we too, like was mentioned earlier, we also have been advising you, as I'm sure you saw, about quarantining items prior to sending them to us. If you're submitting a cataloging request and you're submitting the item in delivery, like we touched on earlier, you really don't need to quarantine that item before you send it to us in delivery, unless you know a patron has touched it. Yeah. But if a patron did touch it, please quarantine it for 7 days because that's the current recommendation for items moving through delivery that have had a patron touch them. Let's see here. We aren't quarantining after the item is processed. Again, much like you, after you've cataloged an item, just staff have been handling it, taking precautions and practicing good hygiene, hand hygiene. So we, like many of your libraries, we're not quarantining the items before we send them back to you in delivery since no patrons have touched it. And then the last thing I wanted to mention here, when the item arrives back at your owning library, it's really up to your library to decide if you want to quarantine it after RSA staff and delivery staff have handled it to get it back to you. Like Rails says, you can determine for yourself. I didn't put it here, but just remember not to quarantine anything in the blue delivery bin, because we'll run out of delivery bins. There aren't enough bins for libraries to quarantine in those. I'm thinking you might have seen a message even from Rails about that. Yeah, that's the main gist of what I wanted to review for quarantine and precautions. Remember, we're not discouraging you from sending items through delivery. We just want to make sure that you're informed about the quarantine and how that can really make it even longer to process the item after the 7 days. There's always the scans, photos, faxes to submit things. And it looks like I read earlier, that's great that Lori at Washington, she's discovered the scanning during the pandemic and really prefers that over the photocopy she used to send in the delivery. So that's great. If the pandemic has had a silver lining for you, perhaps like Lori, where you try out a new submission method you might not have otherwise tried out. Yeah, and of course we will reevaluate the quarantine period when Rails and the Realm project reconsider their guidance. So we'll certainly keep you posted. But I just wanted to thank you again for being understanding of what we're doing with quarantine. I know it can seem like a pain, and I know there's been complaints from members really all over the state, including in Heartland Library System in the southern part of the state. I know that the quarantine piece has really caused some frustration. So I just wanted to tell you again that we appreciate you bearing with us, and there will be a return to normal at some point where a quarantine isn't necessary. We're just not there yet. Yeah. Okay. The other thing about the cataloging requests in terms of quarantine and precautions, I think when I shared that memo in late August, yes, I'm looking at that message here on my other screen. We did share a more detailed procedure that's posted here. You may or may not be interested in this, but we're just trying to be transparent about what we're doing to safely handle items or paper photocopies, anything that you send us in delivery for a cataloging request. The purpose of this wasn't to go overboard, even though it may seem that way, but we're just trying to let you know that we're doing things like having clean hands. We're wiping the outsides and the handles of the delivery bin with a Lysol wipe, essentially. So this here goes step by step of the precautions in case you're wondering. I know there were questions from some of the northern libraries because their delivery and maybe even some of their cataloging, now that I'm saying that, is outsourced. And I know there was discussion in some of those meetings over the summer about, I wonder what kind of precautions those third-party companies that do delivery and outsource cataloging, I wonder what kind of precautions they're taking. So I thought it'd be helpful for us to have a document just to make it really clear in case there's any question on your end. But we truly want to do our part, just like you with your patrons and with each other, to keep everyone safe as we try and get through the pandemic. Okay, any questions about where we are in terms of quarantine time, the memo, or the precautions we're following to safely handle items? Any questions about that? Okay, stay tuned. Of course, as there's changes, there will be more memos and announcements on the listserv. Okay, related to the listserv, the next thing I wanted to mention, 7B, current processing times. This is likely something else that you read on the listserv. This was early last week, about current processing times. And I'm actually I'm pleased with how that message was received. I know there were several member concerns in response to that message, and I think that it's a good time for those concerns to be surfaced because I don't want to say on our end we had become, what's the right word? Apathetic is the wrong word, but I don't want to say we don't care on our end about how many requests are being submitted and how they're accumulating and how the lengthening of the turnaround time had to be done. I don't want to say we became carefree about it, but I do think, though, the concerns shared here in the past week, they really have helped me as well as Kendall realize there needs to be a change in what we're doing. So everyone that shared concerns, or even if you're thinking, you know, I'm sure you're thinking some of these concerns and wondering what the next step is, even if you didn't reach out to share them with me. I do think we're on to something, and I think now is a good time for us to take a step back and think about what we're doing. So that message last Monday talked about current processing times being extended after quarantine if the physical item or the paper photocopies is sent to our office, if that applies. So after that 7-day quarantine, items being processed within 21 to 28 business days. So I think the first thing in terms of agenda item C here, I think it'd be helpful to make sure I do a better job explaining the difference between the standard processing time and the backlog, because I can see how the two, they're often discussed together, and it's very easy to think it's kind of the same thing. So I thought I'd start with trying to do a better job explaining the difference between these two. So the standard processing time, think of that as the request is submitted. Many of you in this meeting use OCLC connection. So in your case, there's either no record available in workflows or OCLC, or there's a level encoding level 3M or 8, or there's a brief record in workflows. The cataloging team, Jane, Lisa, Rhonda, Jennifer, all 4 of them watch the desk throughout the day as these requests come in after you submit your cataloging request. Within that 21 to 28 business day standard processing time, or turnaround time as we call it, they're making sure all of those incoming requests that they're attached to some kind of record in workflows so that the item can start checking out to patrons and filling holds. And this is true especially for those libraries that don't use connection, because OCLC connection, they really have no other way to put the item into workflows until we review their request and put in the record that they need to catalog their item. So all of those requests coming in, we're making sure the items are on some kind of record within the 21 to 28 business day turnaround time. That is important to keep in mind because it's different than the backlog, as I started to explain a couple minutes ago. So items get put into the backlog if it's on a record in workflows, either when you submitted the request or we had to put it on a record for you. Maybe it's a brief record. Maybe there was no existing record available in workflows or OCLC that matched the item. So in that case, we would put in a brief record for you with the philosophy that it's good enough to get your item circulating and checking out. It's put in the backlog, though, because we know we need to revisit that request to make sure your item is cataloged on a full OCLC record with description that includes title, author, ISBNs, publisher information, the year, page numbers, runtime, subject headings, summary, genre headings like mystery or Western. So those items in the backlog are things that have all been cataloged on some kind of record in workflows, but it needs to be revisited to be improved. So it's a full OCLC record. So I think I'll pause, but that's the difference between the standard processing time. Make sure it's on a record within 21 to 28 business days. It can check out. The backlog is it's in workflows, it can check out, but we need to revisit it because it's not on the best possible record. It could be on. Does that make sense? So I'll pause here. The two really go hand in hand. So I think that it's very easy to wonder what the difference is between the standard processing time and the backlog. And like I said, I'm really grateful, may seem like a cliche term, but it was refreshing to me to know that there are questions about this. And the listserv post I sent last week suggested that we could all use another refresher on this.
This is Michelle, Erica, and I
Sure.
totally understand what you're saying, so I get it. I just thought I'd tell you that versus putting it in the chat.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it's nice to hear from someone with a microphone.
And it looks like you've got some other affirmative
Okay, good.
responses.
Yeah. Let me, oh, I've got that on my other screen. Yeah. Okay, good. It looks like Heidi from Alpha Park, Jennifer from Peoria, and from Clover. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I will push forward, but again, chime in if you're continuing to think it over and it's still a little bit foggy what the standard processing time versus the backlog is. Yeah. Okay. Let me flip here back to my I've got too many documents open. I knew that was going to happen, but that's just the nature of how it goes. Okay, this next concern, again, grateful, cliche word, but thankful, appreciative that members, a few of you reached out after that email last week about the lengthened turnaround time. And you said, wait a minute, what if you started to offer OCLC connection training again so that some of us members who aren't using it could start using it again, and that would relieve some pressure on RSA's end because we could find the record, bring it into workflows from OCLC, and then still tell you if it needs improvement of some kind. And that actually, again, I know this has been a concern off and on longer than the pandemic. This I feel like has been ongoing since we made the decision to stop connection training. I would say it's been at least 2, possibly 3 years ago. After talking about it with Kendall and getting some clarification from him about when exactly the RSA membership levels are going to be reworked and implemented, I do think that we need to push ahead with connection training. It won't be the same as it was before, if you remember what RSA, did for OCLC connection training. I'm not ready at this meeting to share all the details. That will come at the roundtable that I'd like to have in the next month or so about cataloging requests and the proposed changes and getting your feedback. So I'm not quite ready to share all of the details. I admit I'm still trying to think through them. But after talking with Kendall this past week, now I realize that the membership levels, I don't want to say I thought it was going to be a simple, fast, or not a big project. I knew that it was going to be a lengthy project, but having him tell me that those new membership levels to go with our strategic plan, they're probably not going to be ready until calendar year 2022 at the earliest. Because if that RSA membership committee gets started this fall, as they intend to on the levels, it really is going to take at least the next year to come up with new levels, not just for cataloging, but report circulation, holds, different RSA CAT features, online apps like Blue Cloud Mobiles, and piecing them into different levels that you would then pay for, depending on what you and your community needs. That was an eye opener to be told calendar year 2022. That's I was hoping it would be next year. So I do realize after that discussion with Kendall and then the concerns, particularly lately in light of the lengthened turnaround time and the volume of incoming requests coming at us that you're submitting, I do think that we need to revisit the connection training earlier than 2022. And I'm, like I said, trying to put together how that will work. I can tell you that it's going to have tighter requirements than we had in the past. We're certainly not going to require anything like library school coursework. We're not requiring that to use Connection. Many of you actually in this meeting that already use Connection, you won't have any trouble keeping it. I'll just say that for now with what I know about the requirements. But we just, we're trying to rethink this, and you could tell I don't know all the details yet, but mostly I just wanted to assure everyone, if you asked or even if you didn't, but you've been thinking it, that we realize the Connection OCLC cataloging level needs to be rethought in light of not just these concerns, but also what the timeline is now for these membership levels. We had been holding off. I probably should have mentioned that from the start. We had been holding off with the Connection training, thinking it would make sense to restart it with the membership levels being reworked. But like I said, I just don't think that's a doable goal at this point, since that's not going to be until calendar year 2022 at the earliest. Revising the requirements for the OCLC Connection cataloging level, that will require a revision to the cataloging core competencies. So if all goes according to plan, I can have a preliminary draft shared with the RSA board in November, bring it to this committee in January, hoping to get approval in January, depending on what you think. And then we can move forward in February with having the users group approve the new OCLC cataloging requirements and the competencies, have them approve that in February. And then we can actually think about moving forward and executing training after that. So there's many steps to do this, but I do think it's going to be a faster process than waiting for these membership levels to actually be not just implemented, they also need to be approved too. That's another important step. And there could be there could be some feedback too with those membership levels, which wouldn't necessarily mean they're approved right away in calendar year 2022. So that's the other thing to keep in mind. Okay, that was the second concern. I have one more concern to share with you, but I'm going to pause again and see if there were any questions, at least based off of what I shared. I don't have the specifics yet, but the bottom line is I realize we need to restart the OCLC Connection training, but it will look different and have some different requirements to go with it. Okay, do you see anything in the chat,
No.
Jane? I'm looking too.
Yeah, I don't see anything.
Okay, I'll go ahead and push forward to this last concern. But again, if you think of something, just go ahead and put it in the chat. And you can always, of course, email me or call me after the meeting as well. But like I said, most of the libraries using Connection, it will continue for you because you're at this point, the requirements I'm thinking of, Kendall and I had talked about, but certainly they're not set in stone and they need additional feedback, both internally and from our members. But I would say the majority of libraries using the connection will continue to use it when we resume that training. Yeah. Okay. The last concern, this one had to do with what about RSA providing a training for members how to do what I call advanced cataloging. So making edits to OCLC records, doing upgrades, so improving them from those dreaded level 3s, M's and 8s to good, full, rich description, making brand new original OCLC records if there's not one available. So I did have that as a suggestion as well to help relieve some pressure on our end. And again, I think it makes sense for that to be a suggestion. Unfortunately, it will not it will not work because it's beyond our scope to be providing that training for our members. Unfortunately, we can't really get the time to be teaching. It really would have to be a class like what the Cataloging Maintenance Center is teaching, where it lasts 5 to 6 weeks. There's assignments and different modules. I know several of us on the cataloging team have taken some of those CMC courses for cataloging books and video recordings. You might have taken them too, or you're in the process of taking them. So unfortunately, that type of cataloging support, training members how to do that advanced cataloging, that unfortunately is beyond our scope as RSA staff. I do think, though, that any of our members are certainly welcome to attend those CMC classes. I know you've seen them posted on the listserv. If you are making edits to OCLC records, upgrading or doing original records, I really would like to know so that I can make sure you have a copy of the standards we use internally. And this is something that I know, for example, I've shared these internal standards with Peoria Public Library and Spoon River College because the staff there has changed recently. But I also wanted to share these. Oh, you're welcome, Jennifer. I also wanted to share them. I know Normal is doing advanced cataloging, which is great because it does relieve some pressure on our end that you're able to catalog in-house. But I know Normal is on my list to touch base and share our standards with you just so that we can make sure we're on the same page. And I'm happy to answer, of course, questions or do a phone call, but we're not by any means trying to change the way that you're doing things at your library, but we're just trying to set baselines. Like, for example, make sure as you create new bibliographic records in OCLC, you're using the resource description and access, the RDA rules, making sure if you're cataloging an item that you're putting a summary in the record if possible. Making sure it has a couple subject headings if you're doing advanced cataloging. So I'm thinking a lot of these things, just looking at, for example, the records that Normal has been making, they're good records. It's not like you're going to need to overhaul what you're doing, but we just know that there's a few of our members that have cataloging staff that are able to do originals, upgrades, edits, advanced cataloging because they've taken the training on their end and it's part of their position description at their library like Normal. Yeah, and Peoria too. So I just know from my end, for those of you that are doing those advanced cataloging, I'd like to make sure you've got a copy of our standards so that we can make sure we're on the same page, at least to some extent. I know there'll always be variations in a database as large as ours with over 1 million bib records, but we can certainly always try to make sure we're on the same page, those of us that are doing the more advanced tasks. let's see, looking at comments here. Oh, you're welcome, Peoria. I see a couple questions, or excuse me, comments. Yeah, that's great. Yes, Jenna, for it normal. Yeah, I'd like to touch base with you to share our standards with you and Julia and anyone else on the cataloging team there that it'd be helpful. Yeah, okay. So at Clover, you're also doing some advanced cataloging. Okay. Yeah, good to know. We'll get a copy of those to you as well. There could be more that I don't know about. So certainly chime in if you're in this meeting and this is something that you're doing. The plan is to post on the listserv. I'd like to send a message out asking who's doing advanced cataloging just so I can get an idea and send standards. Yeah. Eventually, well, I don't know at this point. Part of the initial plan was for those reworked membership levels. Remember, I had talked about how that project is starting here this fall and will continue into the next year. Part of the plan initially was to have an advanced cataloging level where there'd be some requirements for that under these new levels. I'm not really sure how these levels are going to play out. So I don't want to say we're not going to have a level in the membership for advanced cataloging, but I'm just not sure at this point how those levels are going to play out. So we'll certainly keep you posted. But I think the good thing to do in the meantime is if you're doing advanced cataloging, like I've been mentioning, just to either touch base with me or wait for the listserv post and we can share standards with you. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to pause again. I feel like it's a little bit stream of consciousness since I don't have all the details here worked out for some of these things I've been talking about. But are there any questions or concerns about the original advanced editing upgrade type of cataloging? Okay. As always, any of you, regardless of the size, the type of your library, even if you're Peoria, Normal, Quincy, Spoon River College, Clover, anyone can still submit the cataloging requests if you need us to create a bibliographic record. If it's in need of an upgrade, we'll revisit that in the cataloging request roundtable. But for now, I just wanted to assure you that there's no expectation from RSA's end to catalog at the advanced level. But I do realize, though, there's several of you, like I've been talking about, that are able to do it in-house, which is wonderful. And you have the staff and the time to do so. So we're certainly not going to try and stop you. But we just want to make sure all of our members know anyone can submit these requests, even if you are an advanced cataloging library. Okay. So this last item here under the cataloging requests about the roundtable, I know I've mentioned this a few times already. Yes, so what the plan is, we're having the higher level preliminary discussion today. This roundtable meeting I've been mentioning, I told Kendall, I said, I can't push this on the back burner like we've done some other projects that we really need to do, but priorities have shifted. And he agrees with me that this really does need to take top priority here in the next month to month and a half. So this will not be shifted and set aside to be revisited later because like I said, I realize based on the concerns, we're in the 4th month of this very high intense peak on our end of cataloging requests being submitted. I realize that we need to think about making a change sooner rather than later. So that roundtable meeting will share more specifics. I do plan to get a date and a time set pretty soon for that and send a note on the listserv. So be on the lookout for that. Certainly, if you can't attend, we understand. We'll have a recording and notes available. And then we'd like to have a period to consider member feedback from that roundtable, make adjustments to the plan, and then announce an effective date for it. So we won't put it in effect right after we talk about it at the roundtable. We will have some time to think it over based on the feedback and make any necessary adjustments before we do an implementation date. We truly just don't want anyone to feel, I know I said this earlier, we just don't want you to feel like you've been submitting things in vain, because I realize several of you in this meeting actually have requests that are in the backlog that are almost 2 years old. And I realize we cannot continue this way, especially in light of how submissions have been going for us these past few months. It just isn't sustainable. And like Kendall told me, and I agree, and you probably will too, we created this department 5.5 years ago. We didn't offer centralized cataloging services at RSA before then. You might remember it was Rhonda and I at that point, with some additional staff who have since left. But it's just time for us to revisit what we're trying to do in light of the current trends and how things are going for us. So now is a good time to think about changing, if that makes sense. Since 5.5 years ago, there's been quite a bit that has changed since then. I just feel like, though, too, I do owe an apology because I realize looking back, this change probably should have been made maybe a year or so earlier. But better late than never, right? Because we have to start somewhere. Yeah, there has been lots of growing. That's right, Rhonda. Lots of members submitting, which is wonderful because that tells me you value a quality database. You want good records that patrons and staff can find, not just at your library, but system-wide. So I think that the trends are they're positive in a sense because you want good records, you understand, but we'll just take a look again at our priorities and think about what is really helpful for you to submit and what can be possibly pursued as a database maintenance project. Yeah, okay. Any final thoughts before we're almost done here. Actually, we've got 14 minutes left. We should end on time. But before I move on, I'll pause again in case there's any thoughts about the cataloging request agenda item. Okay, I'll go ahead and push forward, but again, chime in on the chat if you think of something. Okay, a few things here under the supervisor's update. We do have several new libraries in the process of joining us, and this is actually part of the reason too for the heavy incoming volume of requests, which is good because again they want good records as they catalog their collections. But the first new member that just started this past July is Stark County Elementary School. This one's a little bit tricky actually because the elementary school, I should start on our homepage. If you're on rsanfp.com and you go to RSA membership here on the left, you can tell I have it bookmarked, so I just automatically go up there. But the Stark County Elementary School, it's a little bit tricky because if I go down in the list, it's alphabetical. Where, okay, right here. Yeah, it would have bitten me. The junior high and the high school, they merged into one collection. They're, like many schools, having budgetary trouble at Stark County School District. This is in Toulon. So they combine the junior and the senior high schools and they have one library. So they use this Stark County High School code. But then the elementary school, they joined RSA this summer, as I mentioned, And since the junior high code wasn't being used anymore, we gave them the code, and it saved them a bunch of money, because if we have to have Cersei Dynex, our workflows vendor, create one of these new codes, it's quite pricey, both for us and for the member. So even though this says Stark County Junior High, it's actually the elementary school. They're just cataloging, as this list says, but when they start to do checkouts and holds, it could be confusing with this code. So we'll certainly keep you posted when this school starts to do checkouts and holds, so you can print an updated copy of this membership list. Notice up here at the top, there's a download link. Another new member is Astoria Public Library. They started cataloging almost a year ago, December 2019. They're still cataloging. The Ransom Public Library near Galesburg, they started in April 2018, and they are finished cataloging. They've actually been cataloged for some time, but due to the pandemic and some other reasons, they finally are going to get their final cataloging visit next Friday, October 9th. And then Anna will help them get started with patron entry and circulation and holds. So Ransom is the next one coming down the tube, so to speak. And then Williamsfield PL, this is also kind of in the Galesburg area, if I remember right. They started cataloging back in August 2017, and they too are in need of a final cataloging visit. It took them a little bit longer than they expected to catalog, because there had been some staff changes, and I remember their cataloging lady was on maternity leave for a while. So yeah, they're ready at Williamsfield to do their final cataloging visit and move forward as well. So just watch the listserv, like I said, as those members I mentioned go online, so you know to watch for holds and other things for them. Looks like I shut my folder I needed to be in earlier, so I'll get back there. Are there any questions or comments, Jane, in the chat?
No.
Okay, excellent. The next thing on the agenda is the new workflows cataloging parameters. We'll put these codes in the meeting notes. I'll be sure Jennifer on my team to make sure I tell you where they're saved. I know I kind of went there quickly, but I did just want to give you some lists here of the new home locations we created since we last met in January. So if your library is interested in using any of these, feel free to send a note to the help desk. And remember, Rhonda is our cataloging parameter point person, so she will get you set up. And like I said, we'll put these in the notes too, since there's several of them. Here's the new item category 4s, the genres/primary topic codes since last January. Again, we'll put these in the notes, but contact our help desk if you'd like to use any of these for genre primary topics, help with RSA cat searching, help with statistics. And then here's the new item cat 5s since earlier this year. Again, we'll put them in the notes. Same thing too, if you'd like to use any of these, contact the help desk and Rhonda will help you get them set up. We didn't have a pandemic code. That might have been in the 4. Yeah, the 4. I think it might have been you, Michelle, at Morrison and Mary Wiley. That was a good suggestion. It was it was going to be well used, I'm sure.
Yes, it was me, and we've used it a lot.
Good. Yeah, if you do have any suggestions, feel free to share them with the help desk, and Rhonda will see if there's a good enough code that, like she mentioned earlier, or if she needs to pass it along, and we'll create something. Okay, any questions about those codes? Okay, let's see. I'll push forward here. Cataloging training. I wanted to show you the new L2. So if I go to librarylearning.org, if you go to .info, the old address, it'll redirect you here. You might have discovered that. I always log in because you can't see all of the events or the ability to register for events. So I always log in first before I start doing anything. And notice there's events up here. And then over here, there's a little calendar view. It uses a list view by default. So if I click calendar, and then notice here, there's a sponsor menu. Look at all these events scheduled. So you can filter the events on the calendar. If I use the sponsor menu, there's Resource Sharing Alliance. And then if I hit search, yeah, okay, I'm going to push forward. So notice there's a basic workflows cataloging workshop. The registration just closed yesterday. Rhonda's teaching this basic workflows cataloging workshop online here in a couple weeks. So there's one scheduled in January, or excuse me, not January, October. There's one here in November. Jennifer Schote on our team's teaching that one. And then there's one here in December. Yeah, there it is. I know why I mentioned January. Yeah, please don't register for this workshop. I'm in the process of trying to get this. This was a dummy test event as we were learning the new L2 for scheduling events. So just don't register for this one in January. That's where I was going with January. But once you're logged into L2, you should see a register button here. Just take note of the requirements, access to an internet connected computer, you have workflows on your computer, you have a functional webcam. We would like to see your face during the training. It really helps us make sure you're understanding and just kind of creates more of a connection too. So RSA does have webcams if you need one. And then it is important to attend all 3 days. I won't go into what happens if you don't attend all 3 days, because that's a separate discussion. But notice it's broken into 3 days. The session could take 2.5 hours. It'll take between 2 and 2.5 hours, depending on if there's questions at the end, if you run over a little bit. So that's why they're up to 2.5 hours. Canceling if you know you can't come so someone else can register. There are homework assignments now. They shouldn't take in total more than about an hour to do. That's an hour for all 3 sessions, not an hour for each of the 3 sessions. And then just making sure you can connect to Zoom successfully at the start of the session and you're not joining at the last minute trying to get set up. So those are the requirements. As you saw already, we'll send listserv post invitations as these are approaching, and they're on this L2 calendar as well. Okay. Yes, we did our first successful OCLC holding update earlier this month. It went great. We didn't have any, no glaring errors. For the most part, it went really well. I'm still trying to do some looking into how specific features of it function, such as, for example, if you've manually updated a holding in OCLC, but you deleted your item from workflows, but you forgot to go back to OCLC and delete your holding there. I'm looking to see how the new OCLC holding manager process for these batch loads, how it handles situations like that. So this will certainly be an agenda item again at a future meeting. The plan though is to do these monthly because the SWAN consortium in the suburban area that developed this new OHM batch load process. They're willing to run the batch for us as long as we submit files on a certain date each month towards the beginning of the month. So we're hoping we can do it monthly. And it should work out on our end. We may not be able to do it in January, depending on staffing and the New Year holiday, but we're hoping we can do it though the rest of the time. So certainly stay tuned, but just be assured that holdings are being updated again based on your workflows holdings. Yes, Marchive, I feel terrible, but this is another one of those projects where there's very much a need to have better authority control of names, subjects, series, things like enrichments to the records with accelerated reader levels, Lexile levels. This is something that has been pushed to the back burner yet again. Remember, I was mentioning with the restructured cataloging request, we cannot push it to the back burner like some of these other things. But I am going to keep mentioning Marchive in these meetings because I want you to know I haven't forgotten about it. It is still very much a priority, and we do still, most importantly, RSA does still have the money budgeted to do it. So that money to pay this Marchive vendor to do this processing in our database twice a year, we have not reallocated that money for something else. So that's essentially what to know at this point. We're right at 3:30, so I think I'm going to go ahead and actually conclude the meeting. I know it's getting a little bit late in the workday, probably for some of you. So what we can do is I'll share the rest of the information with Jennifer on our team to put in the notes, and she can include it there. And then certainly as well, you can touch base if you read those notes and have any questions. We can go from there as well. I just hate to keep you any longer since, like I said, this is late in the afternoon and you may be finished or close to being finished with your workday. Yeah. Okay. Jennifer, I know I don't really have much of a plan for a specific meeting date, but do you want to go ahead and close the
Sure.
meeting?
Thanks everybody for attending. Don't forget, watch that we'll have a meeting in January of 2021. That sounds so far away. Thanks everybody for attending, and this concludes our meeting.
Thank you again, everyone. I appreciate you setting aside time and sharing feedback and chiming in. I really appreciate your participation. Take good care. Watch for the roundtable invitation in the notes. And we hope to see you again in the next month or so.